Richard, welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, I was looking forward to this. Thanks, Casey.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. This is a unique opportunity, something we've never done here on the show. This is a follow-up episode, which we've done many follow-up episodes in the past. However, we've never done one quite like this, where we've had one of our weekend reading subscribers, join us live on Facebook right now. Yvette, welcome.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here, Yvette. You know, we for our weekend reading subscribers, you have the opportunity to get involved in all kinds of neat things that we do here, not just on the podcast, but at Howard Bailey Financial. And after our interview with Richard, he said, hey, what would be a great idea is to have one of your listeners come on, do a live episode where I'll run them through a napkin test. He calls it a napkin test to help them clarify their purpose in life, where they can find more fulfillment in life. And I said, boy, to have a master counselor like you come on the show and offer this kind of service to one of our subscribers would be absolutely amazing. We sent an email out to reading subscribers, said, hey, here's the interview. This is what we want to do. We had all kinds of applicants. And, you know, we just kind of let one come here. We did it randomly, picked one. We got Yvette that's joining us here to go through this. So before we get started here, Richard, I want to ask Yvette, why did you want to pursue this? Why were you interested in doing this test with us?
It's exactly up my alley. I am always looking for books and resources and podcasts and things that both of you provide about living life fully and trying to discover our purpose and how can I really, that's what Carpe Diem is all about, seize the day, and that's what my website and my writing is all about. So again, it was just the perfect opportunity for me to be coached by the master here. So, you know.
Well, I'm curious. Your website, I want to know a little bit more. Carpe Diem Day. Why did you start this site? What's that mean to you?
Well, it's actually started about 12 years ago. I had a friend named Craig Dunham, same initials CD as Carpe Diem, who had ALS. And he was extremely inspirational to me. And just in the way he did live fully, despite losing all his ability to move and talk in the end. And I think of him often. If ever I have a challenge, I think he could do whatever, he could do so much and inspire people without any of those functions. So certainly, you know, with whatever challenges we have in life, we can adapt and still be resilient. And so he reminds me of that. And so I started this whole sort of Carpe Diem movement. I did walks for ALS in his honor. And so on my 60th birthday, and I was always very interested in these special days like, you know, National whatever day, National Margarita Day, or, you know, they have tons of days on every day of the year. And so my kids and friends went together and you can purchase a special day. You have to have a write-up and get approved and everything. But they purchased Carpe Diem Day and presented it to me on my 60th birthday. And it was such a tribute for me. It's such an honor because it showed me that they recognized how important this was to me. And so I said, well, I've got to live up to that. So I created the website Carpe Diem Day, and I started, you know, blogging about living life fully on the site and getting into social media that way and getting on all the lists of people that have the special days, and it's on Chase's calendar of events and you know, other national day sites. So I'm really excited about that. And, you know, when Carpe Diem Day comes around, I, you know, Google and I see that people are having, you know, events. They use those special days a lot to kind of market their whatever they're doing. And they're like, today is Carpe Diem Day. It's the day to seize the day and do such and such. So, so it's really exciting for me.
Well, that's definitely going on our calendar here at Howard Bailey on short notice. So I'm really excited about that. That's so neat. What do you hope the impact is of this day in other people's lives? What do you hope the legacy of this is?
Well, you know, and that's kind of the write-up, and that is the message I do try to spread is really, again, since it was inspired by my friend who, despite challenges, lived fully. That's what I'd like people to remember. I know it's very easy to say I can't do something because I don't have the resources or I don't have the health or, it's too late or whatever. And to recognize that we can always make progress. We can always do something. And again, I also view it as a time to kind of honor. I mean, we have Memorial Day and different days where we think about the people we've lost. But since it originated for me out of, a tribute to someone I lost, I also, in my write-up, say I do think Carpe Diem Day is honoring the people we've learned from that are gone and honoring their legacies and spreading that forward. So those are the kinds of things I would like Carpe Diem Day to mean to people. Or it could just mean doing, getting out there and doing something fun that, you don't normally do. But again, hopefully we do that every day. But a reminder that we need to, value this precious life we have.
Well, that's beautiful. And it seems like for someone like you, it seems like you're someone that shows up with already a high sense of purpose and mission and meaning in life. It seems like you've kind of got this, right? You study this, you enjoy this, you're in some ways immersed in this. I think you were just recently at one of Richard's events here. And so this isn't anything new to you. I know you've been following us for some time. So what would discovering your purpose today, what would you hope at the end of today, after going through this with Richard, through his napkin test, what would this mean to you? What kind of impact do you hope this makes in your life?
Well, even though like anything, we study, there's always more to learn. I'm always interested in different perspectives, and I have challenges with this. I mean, despite, trying to live fully every day, I have my challenges. I have, I know Richard's talked about, and he'll probably review this idea of little p and big P, and I have trouble with the big P in different ways. I still struggle because my purpose for so many years had been as a mother and an employee, and now in this stage of life, I do go through phases of feeling like, does anybody really care what I'm doing? And am I just repeating what's already out there? There's already, these messages that are out there, and how do I get past, I guess, the ego and feeling like I want to have more hits on my website or that kind of thing. So I do still have struggles with taming the beasts of ego, I guess, and really wanting to make sure I'm doing something that matters or feel, and I also, again, want to, as you both do, have other people through having this interview, hopefully other people will listen to it and have their own questions and be exposed to Richard and you, and that helps spread the word too. So, for all of those reasons, I really am so excited about being here.
Well, Richard, as the Pope of Purpose, affectionately known as, I think this is really important. I don't want to leave this alone. I want to make sure we really talk about this because I know for myself, this is a huge part of my life, right? Purpose is something that I'm thinking about almost every day. And I still at times will feel a lack of, right? I'll get in a rut. And I think purpose is like marriage, right? It's not something that we just set it and forget it. We have to work on it. We have to continue to put effort into this. It's not something that we just inherently have and we're blessed for the rest of our lives. I truly think it's something that we have to work on. And I would presume even for someone like you, this is something that you have to continue to work on.
Totally. And I was taking notes while Yvette was talking because she's the guest and I'm the translator at this point. But let me say a few things. First is that I actually use Dead Poets Society, Seize the Day, Carpe Diem in video clips in some of the programs I do. So I love the Carpe Diem concept. And the question is, what does that really mean? What does that mean in practice? Because it can be just a fleeting positive thing that goes away. And so what we're doing here is a checkup. I call it the Got a Minute School of Coaching. because people today, with all that's going on, not just with the pandemic, this was even pre-pandemic, will say to me, because they know, or those that know what I do, say, Richard, got a minute? Can you tell me what I should do with the rest of my life? And I'll go, well, here, let's start with a napkin. Write this down. And if you only got a minute. And so we got more than a minute here, but not a whole lot of minutes. And so I want to dig quickly into that. The other thing, though, is that what Yvette said was really very critical about ALS and her relationship with that. One of the key stories in that new book you held up, Who Do You Want to Be When You Grow Old, which is my newest book, is a story about an ALS Ed Rapp, who was about to be the CEO of Caterpillar worldwide. And at age 57, he was diagnosed with ALS. I had worked with him, coaching and teaching with him and working with Cat. And all of a sudden, he goes back to Raleigh, North Carolina, and he is now 6.5 years into his ALS diagnosis. And his big P is helping to fund research for ALS. And he's raised so far $16 million through his organization for ALS. His little P, every single morning, he gets up, I think it's 8 o'clock Eastern time, and he coaches somebody on the phone or Zoom who just was diagnosed with ALS and is terrified. Now, this is a guy who's doesn't have to do this, obviously, but he gets more joy and more aliveness and more, I wouldn't say healing, because ALS is not, he's not going to get healed, he knows, in his lifetime, but maybe in the future others will. But he gets so much joy and aliveness out of coaching somebody who he doesn't know, who just was diagnosed with ALS, and he shares his protocols, what he does, his faith journey, his health journey, his, you know, all those kinds of things. And so I think what we're talking about here, Casey, just to draw the bottom line, is the process works if you work the process. The purpose process works if you work the process. But purpose is a verb. It's not having a purpose and you put it on the wall and that was your legacy. It's living purposefully on a day-to-day basis, making choices in spite of the adversity, whether it's ALS or other things, and living fully as a result of that. So that's what I want to dig into. But so I just was taking notes from Yvette. Thank you. I think we're in many ways, you're, asking the right questions for yourself, because it's not, you don't just get the answer and then boom, got a minute, here it is, Richard, you're this famous coach. It's like, no, this is a process and it takes work. It takes practice. Purpose is a verb. Action precedes clarity. Now that's a big idea. It seems like a throwaway idea. It is not. You don't learn to ride a bike by reading a manual. You ride the bike. And same with purpose. You do purposeful things and you get a felt sense of that, and it evolves over time. But then you get to certain points, as Yvette said, where it's, empty nest perhaps, or age-related or illness-related or something, where you push the pause button and you step back and you have to look at a larger frame here, which I call the Napkin Test. And so I want to dig into that, but I want to pause here and just say, Yvette or Casey, any comments on what I just commented on?
Well, there's a couple for me that come to the surface. One that we can't let fleet away would be action precedes clarity. I think there's so much time spent by all of us, but it seems to me to be an ever-growing issue that we need to have our entire lives planned out. We need to know exactly what we're going to do in this next phase, whether that's retirement, whether that's going to college, whether that's getting a job, whether that's getting married. And sometimes we just need to take action. Otherwise, we're going to have procrastination just due to paralysis by analysis, right? We're going to be just paralyzed by it.
And continue, but don't go it alone. Action precedes clarity, but it's not just individual action. It's with Yvette, who is, and I'll get into this in a minute, but isolation is fatal. In spite of the situation, going it alone, not a good idea for anybody. And the science of this is so clear. I'll clarify it in a minute, but so go ahead.
Well, my last comment there would just be an ask of you, Richard, and that would be for the audience. How should someone listening to this listen along? How should they be consuming what they're hearing? How should they be following along? What are your thoughts to that person that's on the outside looking in here?
Well, think about a purpose partner. And a purpose partner is a committed listener, somebody you can really get down to it with, that gets you and that doesn't try to fix you. It's care versus cure, so to speak. Interested versus always trying to be interesting. Oh, well, if I were you, I would do this. That's not what we need. What we need is somebody who can be present and a witness to our story and let us figure it out in certain ways. I call that a sounding board or a purpose partner or a committed listener.
So let's find somebody that we can do this with. So you're laying out the exercise. The listener should find someone that they can do this exercise with. And one of the things, I'm in a ads group that we always talk about this. I mean, this is a core tenet of the group that I'm in. And when we get together, we're not there to deliver advice. We're there to ask good questions, right? And let ourselves really create those answers for ourselves. And we always want to seek to go 3 questions deep. Don't stop at the surface, but find someone that can take you from question 1, ask another question, ask another question. That really exemplifies caring.
Exactly. That's a beautiful way to put it.
Right. Well, Richard, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, let's start with the big picture, Yvette. And I have studied and written about something called the good life. And the good life has been around since Aristotle and Plato and maybe even before that in certain ways. So the starting point is the bigger picture before we dive into the Napkin Test, which is kind of a focused decision tool. But the good life has 4 characteristics. This is a question to you, but I'm going to put it out as a narrative. The question is, are you living the good life from your perspective, not from mine or the society's perspective? And the good life has 4 characteristics to it: place, people, right work, which is the Napkin Test, and purpose. So let's just start with the good life. And I will send, if I haven't already, to Casey for readers to download the Good Life inventory and for you to look at it in,
Absolutely, Richard. We'll have that in the show notes. So you can go directly to retirewithpurpose.com and get the show notes right there.
So prior to the Napkin Test, are you living in the place you love? Let's just yes.
Seriously? I mean, yeah.
I am asking. Place is important to people for a whole variety of reasons. It's not just the weather. It has to do with a lot of layers, including weather. So are you, just a quick footnote on that. Are you living in a place you love?
Funny you asked. I just bought a snowbird, which was one of my big life goals, a snowbird condo in Bradenton, Florida. For that reason I love the sun. I live in Colorado, and every winter I'm so cold. And so, I think I have now that snowbird condo and my home in Colorado. So I would say yes.
So to be determined, you don't know yet because you haven't done it, but you've done the first step, and that is getting it. And
I actually was there this winter, so I did experience it a little.
People who retire and move because of the sun and the weather often move back. 80% of them will move back within a year because of the second thing. So place is important.
Right.
Second thing is people. You can be in the most beautiful place on earth and feel isolated and alone, or feel like not connected in ways that you had hoped for. And so people has to do with a lot of layers to that. So Dr. Vivek Murthy, who is the Attorney General under Obama and also under Biden, has written a book called Together. And he says what we need is that people, so to speak, together is more important than many other facets of aging. And he goes into the science of that. And he says you need three levels of people. You need, first of all, what we talked about with Casey a minute ago, committed listener, which is, he calls it intimate. But intimate is not physically intimate. It is emotionally intimate, somebody who gets us. Secondly, we need friends. We need people who have shared common interests or passions and things like that, who we feel like we want to get together with. And third is collective or community. And he said all three are essential to vital aging. And he said if you don't have those, it's almost like worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. He goes into all this science type of stuff. So my question back to you is, people, are you feeling like you've got those three covered?
You are talking so much my language. I'm really interested in connection, and I'm really struggling now because my three grown children, who all were in Colorado, fairly close to me, now are one moved to DC, the other in the family is moving to Raleigh, North Carolina, and one is staying here in Colorado. So I am really kind of going through a lot of turmoil about what to do because my family's going to be dispersed. So, I mean, I do have a life here in Colorado and a lot of people, but my family is really important, the most important to me.
Yeah. So for our listeners, they need to answer the question of people, and it's not just yes or no. There's a lot of, just like you said, there's a lot of nuance in all of this. This is not just what's the answer here. Third is, so are you living in the place you love? We've talked about that. With the people you love, and how will that work in Bradenton, Florida? You don't know yet. And then the third thing is right work, doing right work. And right work is really important to make some distinctions here, because there's a difference between jobs that pay the bills and vocation that gives us meaning. And as Parker Palmer in my book said, I can't imagine living without a vocation. But vocation is how we stay relevant in the world, how we stay relevant to our families, to our communities, and it's how we bring our napkin test, our gifts, passions, and values, regardless of our age and regardless of our, our career or our job in the past. So many people who retire from a job or a career also don't get that vocation is important. It comes from the vocare, to be called. Another way to look at it is calling. So we could do a whole nother session on this, Casey, about calling, which is the deeper dive into, well, what is it that we're called to do, which is the napkin test in a variety of ways. So I want to look at what are you called to do. But before we do that, I want to just say the fourth component. So place, people, right work, which is what we're talking about here, on purpose. So what's your why, Yvette? Why do you get up in the morning? Why do you do what you do? Maybe that's the question you're struggling with, but if you had to answer it right now with an actual answer, why? Why do you get up in the morning? Why don't, what fuels your or ignites your energy?
I think relationships is the number one thing. And so I like my calendar to, have at least one social thing every day on it. And, that's something that I'm going to look forward to. That's part of my process, is to make sure I always have something to look forward to each day. And then that will excite me about getting up.
And is it about you or about others or both?
Both.
Okay. This purpose is always beyond the self. Purpose is a verb. As we said, action precedes clarity, but it's action for the sake of others. You don't have to be Mother Teresa. You don't have to volunteer, but there's some part of purpose that's always about making a contribution to life in other people's lives in some way. And it could be, there are 1,440 purpose moments in a day. So it could be just that moment where you pick up the phone or do an email or give someone a hug or a kind word or something like that. I learned about that from Viktor Frankl back in 1968 when he said in the concentration camp, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning. His whole family was exterminated. He was in several concentration camps, liberated from Auschwitz. And he said the last of the human freedoms is choice. It's to choose to live, the will to live, and the will to live beyond yourself, to give somebody else a kind word, a crust of bread, a hug. And he said that didn't guarantee your survival, but it helped. And those that had that beyond themselves tended to do a bit better. So that was my question to you. Is it for you beyond yourself? Yeah.
Well, I will tell you that I have 4 things that I try to do every day: exercise, learn something new, socialize, and give in some way. And, the give in some way has been a little bit difficult, and I'm sure we'll get into this when we're talking more. But I think a lot of it was because I thought it had to be something big. And I was once talking to a friend while I was doing my socialize. I was hiking. And I was saying, I worried about this. And I'm like, I don't feel like I'm contributing much anymore. And he said, you're contributing just when you're talking here. Every time you smile at someone, it's a contribution because you're lifting someone's spirit. So that really helped me be able to be a little easier on myself on that give one that I was trying to do every day.
Yeah. Well, let's dig into this, but the universal purpose is to grow and give. It sounds like in many ways that you're living in the question yourself, which I totally respect and think is fantastic. And that's why you're on here. And also it's like, is there more? And, sometimes we're pushed by pain. Sometimes we're pulled by possibility. I think in this case, what I'm hearing is you're pulled by possibility. True?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's look at the napkin test. The napkin test is based on a pattern or a formula that has been researched by me and many others. Becca Levy, who at Yale just came out with a book that says that when you have a reason to live beyond yourself, you tend to live 7.5 years longer. She calls it the longevity code, et cetera. So the code here is, so back to the good life, living the place you love with the people you love. Now, what do you do all day, every day? Or what do you do as part of what I call right work? The Buddhists call it right work. The Christians call it stewardship. There's many other names for this, but it's vocation. It's vocation is from cradle to grave. It's not just your job and your career. So that's what we're looking at here. And so the code is gifts, G, the napkin test, code, G plus P, passions, plus values equals bottom line purpose or calling. And calling and purpose to me are interchangeable. So let's just look at gifts here for a minute. Gifts we're born with, and we develop along the way. When I developed a tool called calling cards, which has been I use it every day, and it's used all over the world, and you can get it on Amazon. It's called calling cards. It helps you discern what's true and what's false about your gifts. And it's intuitive. When I developed this, I went back and interviewed parents, teachers, siblings. And so Yvette, do you have siblings?
Yes.
And are your siblings' gifts the same as yours when you think about their natural talents, what they love to do?
No, we're different.
Okay. And when did you see that at first?
I mean, I think that when we were in school, when we were young, we had different interests.
Yeah. No. So I think what we can probably find from your other listeners, Casey, is that people know that their gifts are different. whether they are their siblings or whether they have kids or grandkids, they're different. And so finding out and bringing those forward later in life is what the napkin test is about. So the gifts have 4 characteristics. So question to you, Yvette.
And Richard, if I may, I just want to clarify something. So we have place, people, then, so when you're working with Yvette, you went through place, people, then you went to purpose. Now we're back to right work. And with right work, in order to define that, we're going into the napkin test. And it looks like the napkin test equals purpose. So is the napkin test developing purpose or right work?
Yeah, it ends up enhancing purpose, but it is the way forward to, the action precedes clarity. What's the action that leads to this felt sense? Purpose, Casey, is a felt sense. And when you have a purpose, that's one thing. But living purposefully brings a felt sense. There's a sense of fulfillment, a sense of aliveness, a sense of joy that comes from actually being or doing that as opposed to just having that. So where the napkin test is about naming it and putting it into practice.
So we're naming it. So should we then think of it as place, people, purpose, then right work?
No. Right work leads to purpose.
Okay.
Let's go forward. Let's go forward with it.
Let's see what happens.
Okay. So gifts. What are your gifts? A gift has more, but let's say for the sake of us today, we got them in at School of Coaching, 4 characteristics. First of all, it's something you love to do. Your hand turns to it naturally. You've done it for years. You do it, and you don't even know you're doing it because it's just so natural to you. Secondly, others observe you doing it effortlessly and superbly. And often they observe you doing it because they don't have it and they value it. There's the whole no pain, no gain society that if you didn't have to. And I don't know, I've just always been doing this. And yeah, but you do it, I bet you do it so well. And I observe it, and they may even come to you for help with it because they don't have it. So that's the second characteristic. The third is this: you can't remember learning it. I don't know. I don't have a degree in it. That's not my major. That's not what my career was, or maybe a piece of that. And the fourth is you love learning more about it, hanging out and studying. So when you think about, so one of my gifts as a personal example is awakening spirit in others. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means a lot to me. But what it means is that I love digging into people's stories and find out why they do what they do and why they don't do other things and what they're willing. And so, there's a whole, and then I write, I design, I do other things that are gifts that, so what about you? What would you say are, when you do the calling cards exercise with people, they come up with they go through 52 gifts and they come up with their top 5, and their number 1 is usually their purpose, or informs their purpose. So what about you when you think about that? And I can give you several, and I will give you several reasons. How can I be sure these are my top 5? But just give us our listeners a glimpse at what are your top gifts.
Well, I think one is that I love to learn. So I'm really curious, and I'm always wanting to learn as much as possible.
Yep.
I think a second is I'm really a goal-oriented person, and I'm really good at having the drive and the grit to achieve the goals that I put forth. So I'm very goal-driven, motivated, self-motivated.
Yeah.
And then the third one is I'm very logical, which I was very good with math. I became a software developer. And so as a result, I'm really good at technology. So that is one of my career was in technology. So that is one where, people ask for my help with the technology. And I love to, I love technology.
Yeah. But that's kind of organizing things or some other word for that, right? It's not just about the tech. It's not the technology. It's the way you put it all together.
I think a lot of it is, I just have always been fascinated by computers, and and from the time I was 10, and there wasn't even a personal computer yet, but I wanted to go into computer technology. So I am a project manager kind of person too, but I don't know if that's the same. I just do love.
Yeah, that's a role. That's not a gift.
Yeah. So I would say if you narrow it down, it would probably be logical. I like logic.
Yeah. But it seems like to me, it's kind of like composing things. It's seeing the big picture and putting things together for people and something like that.
I like that too. I'd be curious to see what the 52, did you say there's 52 out there? I don't know if any of these three would be on that list.
Well, there may be different words for it, but so say
learning about technology is overcoming a problem, right? You're learning about something new. That is technology. It's constantly something new. You like to learn it and teach it to others.
Yeah.
So let's just stick for now because we don't have a lot of time with learning and curiosity.
Okay.
So let's just say that in the next phase of life, you want to, the future belongs to the learners, not the knowers. And you're a learner, and you love learning. And so with the Napkin Test, gifts are what you want to serve, what you want to do. Passions are about curiosity, whether you're passionate about something, I'm not passionate about, but it's who would you like to help learn? Who would you like, or what would you like to learn? That kind of thing. So let's look very quickly at the P in the formula, G plus P, passions. What triggers your curiosity these days?
I'm really interested in brain health a lot these days. And, how we build neuroplasticity and, that relates to learning. So,
yeah. Okay, good. Fantastic. Let's just stop there. Then values, the V, is how you want to go about it. In other words, there's how do you want to serve, who do you want to serve, and where do you want to serve? What energizes you and what drains you? So many people who retire say, oh, I actually love what I did. And I love the content of what I was doing, but the place sucked. I'm done with that. I don't want to work in organizations anymore. I don't want to do whatever. But the question is, what seems to be the kind of thing out there that would, the role you could play or the place you could play that energizes you versus drains you?
I love social media, and I've been a blogger for 15 years. I really like writing. I did write a humor book. So I think writing and social media, and I tried my hand at podcasting too. And, so just reaching the community and I really like discussion too. So that's, I think.
And I have a sense here as it relates to purpose, as it relates to the bottom line, which you're coming into right now, is that you really want to remain relevant.
Yes, that's true.
And one of the things is that how do I stay relevant? And so if you're using your learning gifts on brain health and plasticity in ways that really reach out and help others, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or is that okay? And so if you went to the bottom of the napkin test and said, okay, in 35 minutes here, we looked at this. Why do I get up in the morning? What's my purpose? It's to blank. How would you say that?
To help continuing to have a healthy mind and help others with their, build their own or be aware of what things they can do to have a healthy mind.
Yeah. Bingo. When you said that, if I am watching you, but if others are watching you, there was a certain sense of, aliveness, a certain sense of, I won't call it joy yet, but a certain sense of vitality that's there. And you don't have to do it full time. It can be part of a portfolio of other things you do, but this needs to be explored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Yeah. When you go through a process like the napkin test, there are 6 steps. First is reflect, which we're just doing. Second is to connect, to talk to somebody else. Do you have a purpose partner, somebody you can talk to about this, what we just talked about?
Yes.
Okay. Third is explore, is to get out there and rather than say, well, I'm not the world's expert in this, or it's like, forget that. Just open doors and look at who else is doing this. Who else is out there doing this that I could actually I don't have to maybe invent this myself, or maybe I do, but I want to find out who else is in this category, because I know personally other people in this category would love to talk to you. So, if you start to explore and then choose, say, I'm going to do a deep, of the options that I've explored, I'm going to do a deep dive into this. And then the fifth thing, so you follow me in the cycle here, it's reflect, connect, explore, choose, and then repack. And repack means, oh, Richard, I don't have time, or I don't have money, or I don't have, well, as you said in the beginning, time is precious. It's your most precious currency. What do you need to unpack and let go of in terms of either time or money to spend some time on this? If action precedes clarity, if you're not willing to act, forget it. It's not going to happen. It's going to be another pipe dream, and you can just keep cycling over and over and over again. And then the final point is act. What do I need to do? What's the first step I need to do to make this happen? And it's a small step, but that usually leads to other steps. So the process of reflect, connect, explore, choose, repack, act is a way forward with the napkin test. And I want to end with, or not end, but I know our time is up here, but in case you want to just say, well, how can I be sure these are my top gifts? We can talk about that. But let me pause here, Casey, and say, where are we time-wise? Where are we, Yvette, with what we intended to do here?
Well, Richard, I want to make sure you go to that. So why don't you hit on that real quick, and then we can bring things to a wrap. I know this has been really helpful for me. So we've gone a long ways here.
Yeah, okay. So if you look at your gifts, for example, and you look at, first of all, peak experiences in your life. So you've named your gifts, right? And you've named this learning and these other couple of gifts. And you go back and you look at the peak experiences. When I coach someone in a longer time period rather than the got a minute, I dissect 7 of their peak experiences to see if that learning thing was there. And they say, oh, there it is there. There it is again. And they all of a sudden they go back and they say, wow, I didn't realize that I get so much energy out of this. Secondly, as you look at, you unpack your jobs. What's your worst job, your best job? And you say, the best job is when I was learning and doing those things, and the worst job is when I wasn't doing those. And, you sort of take the formula, gifts, passions, and values, and you unpack your best and worst jobs. Third thing is you get feedback from your sounding board. You take 5 cards. If you have the calling cards exercise, you could do that with others and say, can you do this on me? And give me some feedback. And if you don't buy the calling cards, you can just take 5 index cards, give them to 5 close people, and just say, what is my gift? And then see what the thread is in those. And finally is just, I call it the somatic insight. And that is catching yourself in the act of being yourself on a day-to-day basis. In the course of a day, when I developed the calling cards, Casey, I had people remember beepers, and I would beep them during the course of the day and say, what are you doing right now? Are you getting great joy, or is it draining you or energizing you? And people said, oh my God, I didn't realize how drained I am doing this. So there's those things you don't love to do, which we didn't talk about, that's a whole other piece of this. And what I was doing right now was what I love to do. I wish I could do this more. So they got insight from just being beeped at the time, and I got insight into the whole calling cards. So somatics means just observing yourself and catching yourself in the act of being yourself. Today, I feel really alive when I'm doing this, and I don't feel alive when I'm not doing this.
That's fantastic, Richard. Well, thanks for this. Yvette, thanks for joining us here today. I think this has been a lot of fun. I know I went through this myself, and as I was going through it myself, I just gained further clarity around my purpose. And for me, I really love the ability to just deliver that in a one-sentence form, know exactly what that purpose is. That creates so much more clarity for me on a daily basis on what I'm supposed to be doing when I get up and throughout the day, when I go to sleep, where I'm going to be, and how I'm going to generate fulfillment in my life. I hope this has created more of that for you and many of you out there as well. If you want to dive in deeper into Richard's content, check out the show notes, or you can get a free copy of Richard's book, Who Do You Want to Be When You Grow Old? This is the most recent book that Richard has put out. It's a fantastic book. He believes it's his best book of all time, and he's had some really good books over the years. If you'd like to get a free copy, all you have to do is this. You can just write an honest rating and review of the podcast over on iTunes, and then shoot us an email at info@howardbailey.com, and we will send you the book for free. I hope you found this as enjoyable as me. Richard, thank you for joining us. Yvette, thank you for joining us. And I'm sure we'll see you again. And I know, Richard, we're going to do this again. So thanks again.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Yvette.
Thank you so much.